Hi everybody, welcome back. We're on our next lecture as part of the Gilded Age and Progressive Era unit. On this one, we're going to start to take a look at the labor wars, or the era when the labor unions are going to start to take over and they're going to start to really push for. We'll take a look at what they're pushing for, but it's really kind of summed up right up here: 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. Even though it's going to be more than just those. The reason why I call it wars is people are going to die in these things. We think of a strike today, and we think of just picketing and stuff, but people are actually dying for your 8-hour workday during the 1800s, 1880s, 1890s, 1900s. This one is going to focus on the unions and the tactics. We're going to have one later that's actually going to go into the major strikes of the period. So let's go ahead and get started. So the causes for this labor movement is we have dangerous work conditions. We have long hours in a work week. It could be 12-hour days, usually more than 11 hours definitely, and it is close to 70 hours a week that people are working. Right? Low pay, right? And dropping. Right? These businesses are paying 20 cents a day, 25 cents a day maybe. But that's dropping because they're basically going out and they're recruiting foreign workers to come to the United States and work for even less. They're keeping control of that cost. Another thing that's going on is, if you see over here, we've got child and prison labor happening. Both of these pictures are showing child labor, but what that does is you don't have to pay a child as much as an adult worker, and you definitely don't have to pay a prisoner as much. In fact, prison work is almost free. So labor unions are going to start to form to protest those things, and a few other things as well, but mainly the number of hours people are working, unsafe working conditions, and the use of child labor as well, along with low wages. So the unity, labor unions provide unity. Everybody in the factory, if they join the union, now they have a larger voice, kind of giving you an idea of what this looks like. If one person in this class came to me and asked for extra credit, that they didn't think something was fair, they wanted extra credit, I might consider it. But if everybody in the class said, hey, I don't think this is necessarily fair, can you look back at this, I'm probably going to be more apt to do that if everybody believes it's unfair. Right? So there's the strength in numbers, and together you can bargain for a better deal. Right? The boss does not want to replace all of his workers. He loses all that experience. So the major labor unions we're talking about at this time, over here, Knights of Labor, 1869, it's going to be a trade union. They don't care what you do. They want to unite all the workers in the United States. They're focused on social reforms. They want to outlaw child labor. They want equal pay for men and women. They want a shortened workday. They want cooperative shops. So they don't even want wages. They want the business to be owned by the owner, but also have the workers have a stake, almost like shares, stock shares. So if the company does well, the workers do well, and if the company doesn't do as well, well, then they have more of a reason to work harder. The AFL, or the AFL, 1886, they're more of a craft union. They want only skilled workers, and they want to focus on bread and butter unionism, higher pay, better working conditions. Those are the main things they're focusing on. And they're going to try to unite these workers and push for strikes. The Knights of Labor actually don't push for strikes. The AFL will, and they do that by keeping a national fund so when the strike happens, they can pay their members a salary until the strike is over. And they're actually going to be working with the legislation as well. The leader for the Knights of Labor is this guy, Terence Powderly. The leader for the AFL is Samuel Gompers. Another powerful union, we're going to see this during the strikes, is going to be the American Railway Union. The most powerful industry during this time, it seems, is the railroads, and they are doing things that their workers don't necessarily like. So the ARU is trying to protect those workers. Right? Their leader is going to be Eugene Debs. He is actually going to run for the presidency from a jail cell. Right? That's how committed he is to change. The other union, kind of union, I wanted to talk about really quickly, 1870s in the coal fields of Pennsylvania, there's going to be Irish immigrants who want a better push for working conditions. One of the things that's happened is that they're being replaced with recruited immigrant labor that's brought in for the specific purpose of them losing their jobs or them having to work for less. So they're actually going to be more intimidating. They're going to be sending these notes over here basically saying, hey, this is going to be your house, and this house that they're talking about is a coffin unless you stop importing this immigrant labor. So there's going to be intimidation and battles with the Molly Maguires. Management's position on all of this is that there's more competition in this industrial age and profits are dropping. So to kind of keep the company on good footing, they have to control costs, and one of the easiest costs to control is your workers' wages. That's why they say they're dropping their costs, is to keep everybody employed. They have to drop wages to be competitive. The unions don't necessarily agree. They believe that the corporatism, they're getting more money. The owners are getting more money. They're accruing that wealth, and they're not. They don't care about their workers. So collective bargaining is going to be a union tactic. Strikes. All right, we'll talk about those: boycotting, picketing, demonstrations, close shop. Collective bargaining. This is the basis of the union. All right, the union says we're going to strike unless we get a contract that says we're going to only have 8-hour work days. We're going to be paid $10 an hour. The management comes with their proposal, says 9 hours and 5. They negotiate, they get something worked out. In the end, that's kind of a compromise. They may even have a mediator come in to help them out with this. But that's the basis of the unionism, is that the trade union has a stake in what they get paid. They have a voice. If they don't get that, if the negotiations don't work, they can strike. Right? They can just walk out. Everybody walks out. Now this is risky, because if the boss can find other workers, they might never go back to work again. Right? They might have overplayed their hand. So they can walk out. They can call in sick, which is worse for the owner, because not only does he have no work that day, but since everybody took a sick day, he technically has to pay them. A slowdown strike, where people, they go to work, so they're still at work, but they don't work as hard as they can. And a wildcat strike is basically a strike without a union backing. So everybody just goes in there, and even though they don't have a union, they just strike. And this is going to hurt financially for both parties. The business owner isn't getting any work, so he's losing profit. And the workers aren't getting paid wages, so their family is hurting. So it's kind of a blinking contest. I mean, Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer has a lyric in there. The time he used to work on the docks, the union went on strike, he's down on his luck. The union went on strike, he lost all that money while they were on strike. So he's down on his luck, and not having that money in here. Boycotts, picketing, demonstrations are all the same thing. When you're on strike, you go out there and you raise as much ruckus as you can, trying to get people to know why you're striking. And a closed shop is where a union has an agreement where if you're going to be employed at that shop or that factory, you have to be a part of the union. You must pay dues. You must strike when the union strikes. It's a lot of states don't like closed shops. They think it stops people from being able to work when they want to work. Right? It's somebody else forcing you not to work when the business can be open. Management tactics, they are going to fight against these strikes in these ways. So let's take a look at each one of these. PR campaigns. One of the biggest things that's going to be fought against these unions is that they're going to paint them as communists, they're going to paint them as anarchists, they're going to paint them as creating instability in the country. They're going to focus on the negative impacts on the unions and these strikes. Some of these strikes are going to be violent. Some of these are going to be very violent. There's going to be bombs thrown. So they're going to paint these unions in a very violent, very communist, anarchist, socialist way, as shown by this political cartoon here. Right? This is the past. They're rabble-rousers. They're in jail now after the Haymarket riot. They're going to be hung, and then every patriot in America is going to sing songs over their anarchist grave. Scabs. If a union goes on strike, you can find other workers who will probably work for less. They're not going to be unionized, but they might not be of the same quality. And scabs are going to be hated hated by the unions. So much so that there's going to be fights between scabs and unions. And then if the community doesn't support the scabs, it's going to be a problem for them out there, right? Not getting served at restaurants and stuff. Pinkertons. These are private security guards, detectives hired by the owners. And what they're going to do is they're going to infiltrate sometimes they're going to infiltrate the unions and break them up from the inside, just kind of causing division within the union so a strike doesn't even happen. But if a strike does happen, they have badges, they have guns, they have uniforms, and they are told to break up that strike, sometimes with any means necessary. So there's going to be fighting between the strikers and these Pinkertons, very violent. Lockout. If a owner knows that a strike is coming and he wants to strike a blow before the strike happens, he'll go ahead and start the strike before the workers can. Right? He'll take the advantage and the surprise for himself, and he'll lock them out, put a lock on the door, so you're not coming to work. Now you can go home and tell your wife and tell your sons and daughters why there's no food on the table tonight, but if you're going to strike, I'm going to lock you out before you can. So this is kind of a preemptive owner-induced strike. Up here, this is going to be a Homestead steel mill. And one of the parts about this strike is actually the owner. This is Carnegie, but he's got his second in command, Frick. He's going to build a big fence to not allow the workers to come to work. But it's going to try to show the workers, hey, a strike is going to hurt you. I don't mind waiting you out, but this is to kind of show you what a strike will do to your family. And injunctions is where if it's a very important industry, let's say the coal industry right before winter. I mean, a lot of people up north are going to heat their houses off of coal. What the court system can say, this industry is too important for the United States to allow this strike to go on, that you are blocking an entire industry. So you must go back to work. People's lives are at stake. So they'll order a court injunction. It's going to be used in coal, steel, and railroad industries. Later it's going to be used as air traffic controllers. Not necessarily the courts, but our president is going to sign an executive order saying that if you're striking by this day, air traffic controllers, you've just lost your job. In the Sherman Antitrust Act, this act is actually meant to stop monopolies from forming. It basically says you cannot form a cartel or you cannot form an organization that limits a market. Let's say the railroad, it can't stop railroad trade from happening. It cannot stop that from happening. So a strike, that is going to be the entire railroad industry nationwide, like the Great Railroad Strike in 1877. That could be in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, and some business owners are going to argue that in court and break up these strikes by getting the court to tell the people, hey, you got to go back to work. And the last thing we're going to take a look at is an idea of an open shop, where a union is barred from forcing people to join. Right? So no worker has to join a union to work at that factory. So without that guaranteed dues to support strikes, to keep them going because people aren't worrying about putting bread on their table, the union becomes weaker. Right? People are going to be less likely to strike. They're going to be less likely to have the unions to the union line. Right? This is also going to go into right to work states. Let me stop my timer to make sure I'm under the 15-minute mark. Right to work states are going to not necessarily make unions illegal, but it's going to say that no union can force people to join them as a condition of employment, basically saying that you cannot have a closed shop. All shops have to be open shop. And with that, without that, the unions are going to have much less power. So workers have a right to work without joining a union in these right to work states. If you notice that, they're mostly in the South and the West. Most of the places where you have a lot of factories do not have a right to work law. Unions can say, if you're working in this factory, you have to join the union. And we're done with this one. Like I said, the next one we're going to focus in on the major strikes. Yeah, I'm going.